Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. So this I want to start by doing something. It's one of the first time for the last 50 years. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Gerard Amsellem. I've been starting doing classic film and foreign film for 15 years. So we have been starting with very little number of people, and as we go, we grow. But it's one of the first time that I have a full house. The last film who was full house was Wings of Desire of Wim Wenders. I don't know if you know this film, but all these classic films are bringing more and more people, and I'm very, very happy that you support very good film in what we're trying to do. So, La Cinémathèque and New Wave, the organization that I lead, opened another room of an Institute of Art and Film Studies in Riker Hill Art Park in Livingston, where I will screen films there. And the next film is next Sunday, if you are interested. It's the same kind of lead as this film. It's called Wild Strawberries from Ingmar Bergman, a 1957 film. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to give at the same time a community experience to watch a film together. Most important is to educate people who have questions about the film. When you come to see a 1952 Japanese film, you can be an expert in Japanese film, it happens, or in Japanese culture, or if you are starting and you are curious, it's good for you to have a lot of elements. So I will give you as much element that I can from the film, from the culture, from the history with the doctor here, and we try to give you a lot of tools to be able to connect with this. Be sure that everybody. And so for starting with this, I will tell you that this is a series of Japanese films. The series has 5 films. And today we're watching one of the very important films of Kurosawa. So we're watching one of the most important, the important film of Kurosawa. As you know, he's like one of the most important directors. And really, the most important in film, as I say always, by showing film from all over the world, art is a witness to its time. So when you watch a film, you have to have some connection with the culture and with the time. And always, what I try to do is to introduce this before you start to watch the film. So today we'll talk a little bit about this before the film. I will give you some point of who is Kurosawa, what he has been doing. We're going to watch the film, and after that, this is the most important thing in the Q&A, that where I will go, me as a filmmaker, I will go through all the aspects of filmmaking and all the aspects of the message, and we'll have a Q&A question, whatever people want to ask, we'll try to be the best about this. So we are, one thing I can tell you too, 1952, cinema after the war, filmmaking-wise, there is one group of people who are going to affect the history of cinema before, a little bit at the same time that Kurosawa, is a neorealist. Neorealist is, people like Umberto D, De Sica, some Visconti. People are starting to make film in Italy at the end of World War II who are very strong on the social message. So this is going to be what we think influenced a little bit Kurosawa by doing this film, Ikiru. Before we do this, before I go on talking about who is he and what kind of film he made, I'm going to introduce to someone who is going to talk to you about the history of Japan at that time. So the 1950s, what we're talking in Japan, because when you watch a film, if you know that, it's going to really help you to understand, the message of the film. So this is Dr. Andy Blingeber, who is a professor at Seton Hall, who is going to tell you, or is going to expose you, what is the political, social aspect of Japan in 1950s, after the war. And from there, you will have a little idea, as we watch the film and asking questions after the film, we will really understand a little bit more the meaning of the film, or the message of the film. So let me introduce her, and I hope she will give you a good background about this. So please.
Thank you so much, Gerard. Yes, my name is Anguish. I teach Japanese history at Seton Hall, as well as Asian history. I teach about mythology. I have some great courses on the history of monsters, which are pretty fun. But what the 1950s in Japan, the big animating question that you see emerging in Japan is, what do you tell the dead when you lose? Japan is really a quite fascinating case study when we look at modern history. Because Japan goes from being a colonized nation to a colonial nation. In fact, it's the only non-Euro-American country that successfully makes that transition from being a colonized state by Euro-America to being one of the big boys sitting at the table at the end of World War I. And in the span of about 30 years, it goes from being opened forcibly by Euro-America to first taking on China, which for over 3,000 years had been the preeminent power in Asia. 10 years later, that was the Sino-Japanese War. 10 years later, in the Russo-Japanese War, Japan takes on Russia, a white Christian country. And in so doing, they emerge on the global stage as a major threat and join a brotherhood of imperial nations. Not long after that, after World War I, they're one of the big five, sitting down and deciding how the world should look after World War I. And by the 1930s, they're storming out of the League of Nations and starting a 15-year war. Now, for America, we think of World War II as 4 years. For Japan, it's 15. It starts in 1931 with the invasion of Manchuria, and it becomes a hot war in 1937 when Japan attacks China. And so Japan, by the time we hit 45, is exhausted. There is no more gas in the tank. And so at the end of the war, you have a completely decimated country. You have a country that has reacted pragmatically. The reason Japan made this huge vault in power so quickly was because of pragmatism and of Machiavellian realism. Biological racism placed Japan as one of the countries that should be colonized because they were Mongoloid. Japan fought back not by wringing their hands and saying this is unfair, but by saying we're going to beat them at their own game. If power is what is the language and currency of the international world, we're going to be the most powerful. If money talks, we're going to be rich. And that's what they did. And it worked until it didn't. And a lot of the systems the Japanese created to allow that kind of meteoric rise got eliminated because it was a house of cards. So in 1945, when we hit the occupation by the Allied powers, which honestly was the Americans at that point in Japan. The Allied powers really were the Americans in Japan. The Japanese bureaucracy was filled with people who had been lied to. And now they have to pick up the pieces. So what do you tell the dead when you lose? How do you survive? How do you save your population? How do you move forward? And how do you deal with the intense survival guilt? Because the war took place on Japanese soil. One man, in the days following the end of the war, drove through and gave this account of Japan. If technology will let me. Tokyo was smashed. I think something like 60% of Tokyo just didn't exist anymore. Other cities were burned even more to the ground. Seeing old friends, of course, came with a sense of relief that they were still alive, but depressing the way they had to live in those days. Along with everyone else, I would take rations to them and help them out when I could. Train windows were smashed in because that was the only way people could get in and out of jam-packed cars. But there was very little crime, even though people were literally starving to death. And there was a lot of sadness. The inhabitants of Japan's bombed-out cities faced destitution and desperate food shortages. At least 1,000 people in the capital of Tokyo died within 3 months of the surrender of starvation. So what we're going to see today is the story that translates into to live. And it's the story of a bureaucrat trying to make sense in a world that doesn't, and trying to find hope in a world that's hopeless. And so one thing I want you also to keep in mind is that in 1952, we're ending the occupation in just a few years. But one thing that was a hallmark of the Japanese occupation was that America went in with the best of intentions. They went in wanting to democratize and demilitarize Japan. 2 years later, in 1947, that changed. The Cold War became a serious threat in the view of American leaders. And so democratization and demilitarization took a backseat. And suddenly it was about making Japan strong as a place for America to use. And so censorship, as well as bringing back powerful economic forces, and an attempt to remilitarize Japan, which failed, all became part and parcel of it. And this man, as a bureaucrat, is working within this system. So this film comes out during a period of heavy, heavy Allied censorship. So while we're watching it, this is a film made for Japanese by a Japanese man, but it's a film that has big black markers coming at it left, right, and center from American censors. So think about, as you watch it, what may be subcurrents in there, what may not be being said that's being said. So that's what I have to say, and enjoy the film.
Thank you. So just a few words about who was Kurosawa. Kurosawa was born in 1910. He grew up with a time where cinema was not seen as a great thing in Japan. So his father was somebody very well educated, took him to film when he was very young. So this is a very classical film because he learned filmmaking through an apprenticeship. He went to be an assistant director for 5 years and learned his skills in the most classic ways that film was made at the time, or it's not really made today the same way, but he's following all the rules of this. In his life, he made 30 films, 30 feature films. And as you know, I mean, of course, everybody learned about and know the Seven Samurai. The Seven Samurai are the film who made him famous. But beside that, a lot of people of the Japanese cinema think that he was more a Western filmmaker for the reason that he was educated, very well educated in Russian literature. And that you should know that, because this film is based on the Tolstoy story, which is called The Death of Ivan Ilyich, with a very short book that you can find everywhere. He was really inspired by this, and just before that, he made a film called The Idiot, based on Dostoevsky, was a completely flop. So when he came out from The Idiot, he was really very nervous to do this film. And he had this question about his dad, when was he gonna die, what are we gonna do, all this great question. He's just 42 years old, by the way, and this is his 13th film. So he becomes to be a very, very good filmmaker at that time, and he has a very good idea of what he wants to do. So first film he did in 1943, and as he goes, the 3 films we know very well in the Western world, Rashomon, 1950, where he re-questioned the way how to make film by changing the way I told the story. I don't know if you know this film, guys, anybody know Rashomon? This was a big, big question of like changing the way of film was made. And after that, he did Ikiru, and after Ikiru, he did The Seven Samurai. So when you watch this film, you watch a man who did not stop making film all his life, and who had a very, very specific vision about what it is to make a film. What you watch a film who is differently made by the structure of the film, how it's made, and I will go over all the aspects of the film after the film by telling you what it was the production of the film. He was two, for the people who are filmmakers here, one, he knew everything, Kurosawa, because he started to make film very young. He edited his own film too completely, from the top to the bottom. He knows everything, he's in control of everything. So whenever you watch this, the first time I watched this, like many, many years ago, I did not realize how much details were involved in this kind of film. From building the set in details, the color of the wall, even if it was not color, how it was, everything is so well controlled with a very strong message. The music is there, everything else. But this will do this after the film. So just remember, this is something I just learned or just listened about. One was like about 2 days ago, I was listening a podcast, and this professor from an important film school he said something interesting. He said, my film student today cannot watch a film of the 1950s, of 1940s, because it's too long. And that is a good, I thought, what are you talking about? These people are going to be filmmakers. Even students who are going to be filmmakers cannot stand and sit for 2 hours watching a film. So when you're going to watch this film, you're going to see the power of dialogue, the power of time, all this power who are in the whole film who makes the emotion very, very strong. One thing I can really reconnect to, because next week I will show Bergman of 1957, these guys will really question what life is about. There is a lot of things about humanity, about who you are, about social messages, full of messages, and all detail about their actors. These people, as the opposite of the new realists who are non-professional actors, these guys are professional actors. And I will talk about the main actor after the film and all the elements and how we took them to make this masterpiece. It's interesting because Ikiru is not really like a Kurosawa film, you know, like he's like really kind of different than all this film. It is like interesting because as he was going to the end of his life, this is one of his best films. He recognizes one of his best films. A little bit like Fritz Lang, who at the end of his life, after making many films, recognized that M that he did in 1931, as he was very young, was his best film. So very interesting with filmmakers. As they make film, sometimes it's not because the last film is their best film, or they consider the best film. Sometimes at the point of the time of their life when they make a really good film, which is the case, they recognize this as one of the best films. So I just say again, because I am kind of obsessive about when I show a film, I want to know everything about it. I watched this in the last 2 days, 2 to 3 times, to really understand how the film impacted me. And the film, from 10 years to today, impacted me a little bit differently because, one thing, I am older. When I watched this and I was 30 years old, it was a story of a man facing death. It was a story of my neighbor, of my father, not me. But when I watched it, now, he questioned me. Film can be seen at many times of your life in a different way, same than a book, same than an art piece. You watch, you reflect, always like if it was a new book or a new film, because you are not at the same time or at the same place of where you were before. And I think this is the most important to learn, that the film can be seen 20 times. If it's seen at a different time, it's a different film. So I hope you enjoyed this film. If you have watched it before, just please, you could watch it 20 times. And if you didn't, you're going to experiment one of the greatest filmmakers of cinema, because there is few big names and he is one of the big names. I want to thank you very much for coming, because by doing this and coming to watch this, you support the life of classic film in cinema, not on TV, in cinema. And that is really what we're trying to do. We want people to come, we want people to be a part of the community who support quote-unquote old film, or like serious film, and be able to fight against this superficial, non-interesting film that was like really showering and taking the market from every corner. So thank you very much again, and after we'll talk about all the questions that you have about the film, and we'll try to make it as much of a great experience for you on this Sunday afternoon, cold afternoon. Thank you again. All right, everybody, we can start. You know, I know that after a film of 2 hours and 20 minutes that nobody's used anymore because it's like long, right? I mean, it's like you feel it. And it's not just this. The way we make movie in 1952, this is completely acceptable. Today, a production company will not want to produce a film like this. I can tell you, because I am a filmmaker, so I know what they would like. They would like something with more faster pace. less thinking. So what you see here, it's an art piece, and what I really, sometimes even for me, it might be difficult to stay, and I watch a lot of film, but sometimes it's difficult to stay, but you realize by staying it and going to the process, you go to the process of a creativity, and at the end you get something. By cutting it, you don't get something because life is not made of shortcut. This is a piece of life, it's a piece of art, and so often sometimes you have to go through this process, which can be a little bit more difficult. So when he does this, he's 42 years old. And that I really think it's very important because you will say 42, 42 is really not, old age, but he has already all the feeling and all the question. I will say other director did. Ingmar Bergman at 35 years old, I don't know if you have any connection with this, he does a Seventh Seal, where he talks about death. Death is really something who come in an artistic person very early, like in the 30s, 40s, they start to really question what is the question of life. So as a main theme, this is really what, you can see. We are in 1952. For the people who are interested to know French philosophy, maybe, Jean-Paul Sartre is already an existentialist in 1952. He writes about questioning life and the sense of everything. This is after the war, the neorealists do this. So we are not like off, we are really in the process of really re-questioning existentialism. What it is, what are we doing here? Today this will not really be the same way, or it will be maybe put out different, not the same way. So this, I'm not saying it's the main theme, but it's certainly one of the most important things when you question everything. We'll go through all the other aspects, but the other thing, obviously, is the rebellion against society. There is 2 or 3 thematics I'm trying to simplify it the best I can. The existentialism is one of them, and obviously the critique of bureaucracy and conformity. And Anne will be able to talk to us about this, how as a society Japan was really already very strict, but not just Japan. Everywhere, this idea of what are you doing, not respecting and not rebelling. The rebellious aspect of it in a society will come when? In the 60s. We are 5 or 6 years away from the French New Wave. We are not far away from that. So when we talk about all the elements of films, they are all connecting to history, and this conformity is very, very, very difficult, so very stiff in Japan. Can you say anything about this?
Yeah, I think in particular for this film, one of the main themes that I see come up over and over again that comes directly from Japanese history that perhaps you're not as familiar with is this concept in Japanese of ukiyo. Ukiyo is this concept of impermanence of life, and it comes directly from Buddhism. But starting actually in the 1500s, it begins to get this notion attached to it of this impermanence of life that means that you need to live life to the fullest, and it really gets embraced by the underbelly of society. Ukiyo-e, for example, is the woodblock paintings that you probably are familiar with if you've ever been. Now they're considered high art, but they actually were like the cost of a bowl of rice. They were often using for images of the beaching, the beautiful women. They were advertisements. Now we frame them and put them in the Met. Back then, they were literally advertisements. And it was about the impermanence of them, that you could make all of these prints over and over again, and they could be used and thrown up and wrapped up, and they were just here one day and gone the next. And that's what we see in here, particularly after 1950. You see the rise of the decadence movement in Japan. And it's a literary movement that is also tied in with this idea of impermanence. And because of the lack of drive that's now coming from people's understandings of the war and how life is so fleeting, people turn to absolute debauchery. And that's what we saw in all of those images when he begins to kind of fall in with the women and drinking, alcoholism, all of these things are on the rise. And you see the ways in which it's really the only way you can feel and understand to be human is to fall, becomes the kind of mantra of the decadence movement. And that's what we see really throughout the arc of this film. And he starts off with falling and having that be with the alcohol and with the women, with the dancing, and then with the young women trying to capture that moment of youth, but then we see it becoming life right? For him to feel life, he wants to create something that is to get beyond this monster that is bureaucracy, right? The nothingness that has been 30 years of his life, he wants to make it live again. So those are kind of the themes I drew from it.
What's very interesting is, like, remember we are in 1950s, 1960s is the most rebellious time in our history in this century, you know. And we're going to see people standing up and saying, we don't want to live like this. Life has more meaning than staying on the back of the desk and working. I just was watching something actually yesterday. They were interviewing somebody in 1968, and they said, what are you doing? And he said to the interviewer, he said, I live. They said, what do you mean you live? What are you doing? I live. I don't have to do anything. Because life by itself is something which is rejected with this kind of society. It's always in connection of your work. And not just in Japan. Japan is very stiff because I know so many people who work for Japanese company. I know a little bit more. But everywhere it was like this. So this rebellion is coming really after. But it came before too. Always human needs to scream for freedom, you know. I mean, I don't know if people know me, I did a short film on Herman Melville Bartleby the Scrivener, with like a Wall Street where somebody decided, but because he stopped to do everything. So we have rebellion. Rebellion are very important at that time, and still continue. But one thing which is very important in the way he makes the film, and this is what people have been talking about, is a non-linear way of making the film. You know, Rashomon was the first time, or like why he got really award, because the film is not following a story. He's following a story in 3 or 4 different times, and he goes back and forth. Same with this. At the middle of the movie, he died. I mean, not the middle, but really a good part of the film, he dies, and we talk about it after going back and forth and back and forth. And this really not just technically give you a sense of like the effect that he has on the people, and all this aspect of it. So non-linear film will come. I mean, for the people who know me, they know how much I revere Jean-Luc Godard, and Godard will be the first one to really destroy the narrative line and say, okay, you can tell a story, but you don't have to tell in the right way. And this is already what he does. So he's really somebody like a visionary. The idea of the hero and the anti-heroes, they talk a lot about this. You know, he's a hero in one way because he goes against all this force, but in a different ways, you know. That will be interesting to connect with the Japanese history because, you know, he is a hero. He's moving everything. He's going against everyone, even if he's like, and I will talk to you about like this idea of the image of a monkey, because we'll talk about how he worked with the main actor about this. But the idea of a hero is like Toshiro Mifune in Seven Samurai, you know, and it's like these big guys. So that's an interesting part of this. So what is there anything about this story we can say about that?
I mean the Japanese
I don't know. You.
Yeah.
The Japanese love an anti-hero, actually, going all the way back. They love an underdog story more than anything. And the Japanese literature, going all the way back to Tale of Genji, which is the first novel globally around 1000, they're complicated. All Japanese characters tend to have a lot of dark and light in them. And you can see in him the contrast of both. He is absolutely a hero, but what he's doing is not what he's supposed to be doing. And so it shows both of those. And the decadence movement really was this push for more anti-heroes to show the dark underbelly of society, and he's doing both. He's kind of opening this window to what shouldn't be, but what is, and what's great about what shouldn't be.
Thank you. And obviously what people talk all the time on this film, they talk about the swing set. The swing set is a closure. Remember, the first image is a cancer, and the last image is a swing set. Swing set between death and youth, all this kind of movement. So you can interpret this. You have a palette of entertainment which is huge. You can go from, you know, him looking at Toyo, a young woman, and seeing, you know, youth, and really seeing, trying to reinforce like his strength to be alive, and you can see him as how he goes, and he really gonna give to this young kid a following and a future of society. So rich films are all the time made about a lot of interpretation and give you everything to be open. the thing that about him is, as you know, Toshiro Mifune, who is like the big actor for Kurosawa, he played in 16 of his films, was like, you know, the guys that he worked with. But when he come to this role, he could not give it to him. He could not. He saw that, you know, he had a very good relation with him. But Takashi Shimura, is the main actor, was, you see, to get to this image of Takashi Shimura was very difficult because Kurosawa, as a visionary, had to vision and make the idea and the vision of Ikiru. And what he told him was really interesting, and I'm still asking myself question about this, saying, he says, think about a ape, like a monkey. He wanted him to be very close to a primate, for like just for his visual or his vision. And with this, through that, and I think he is very successful at it, he got into the feeling of being like so close to something and this emotion be so close. So he just got, you know, him to do a lot of different things, and he is a very good actor, professional actor, that he has been doing a lot of different things, and they spent hours with Kurosawa to try to find the right thing. We're talking even the voice, the sound of the voice when he sings a song. This is, he spent hours trying to find, should be a really low voice, a high voice, all these kind of details that we don't know because we are watching a film, we are watching a story. But the process of making the film is so much more difficult than that, and it takes really a lot of work. I will go after a little bit about the prop and everything else, but he used a term which is very interesting, and I think you might be interested by this. He used a term of small prop and big prop. Does not have to do with the size. He said it can be a little thing having a very, very big importance in the film, and this is like a big prop. And he works everything that you see. From the paper on the wall, tied up. It took them 3 trucks to bring this paper. Because they said, how are they going to put this paper? Like, they went and they took 3 trucks of newspaper and they tied them up against the wall. That's to remind me like a scene of the bicycle thief. I don't know if anybody remembers this film where he goes to and he sees all the sheets on the wall. So this is like cinematic language we don't have today. People don't use this thing today. People will tell you or will make an action on this. And just by this you realize the weight on the shoulder of bureaucracy. Everything shows you. When they build a set, all these sets are built. So they're built by a production supervisor, and they build a wall. The stain that there is on the wall, it's made to look it like run down and not well. Everything, the clothes, he makes an environment which is really, really powerful on this drain after the war, the feeling of like kind of despair, you know, and kind of lost. And of course, you know, this rebellion against this woman who are like really working class women who want something, and now he's going to take their side. So the story by itself came for him by one thing. He got up one morning and he called the script supervisor, so people who work with him. He worked with 2 script supervisors, 2 script people with him. And he said to the main guy, he said, I want to write a script about a man who has 6 months to live and changing his life. That's how he started. He started, Kurosawa starting all his writing by one sentence. And they're starting to write, And when they were at the middle of the writing, another guy came and he said, I don't think it's good. So they restarted again, and he spent a lot of time as a team of people. So even so he was a very controlling director and knew what he wanted, he was not, he worked a lot with people, and then they built every character, everything that you see. Even so, they say that it's based on a Tolstoy story, the death of Ivan Ilyich, but really they did everything. They wrote the dialogue. Nothing is improvised. There is no one line was improvised in this. Every dialogue, I will say even more. I don't know if, you know, he was a painter. Before to become a filmmaker, Kurosawa went to painting school. So he painted every frame. The storyboard, now people will laugh at this in film school. They say, what do you mean the storyboard? You know, I mean, every storyboard, and I saw them, they are painted with colors. So he colored them, he paints them, and this is the frame that he's gonna shoot. One camera. This is one camera. He starts to take several cameras in Seven Samurai. So all these are the language of film are very important. He's an editor, he edits the film. So I don't know, editing is like the most precious, the most difficult thing in filmmaking. 99% of the filmmaker, after they finish shooting the film, they edit. Not him. I said, what do you mean? No, he doesn't, I didn't know. And I hear him and he said, every time I finish a scene, I edit it. So he does a scene with this actor, he edits it, and what he does, I think this is fascinating, is like, he shows it to his actors. He shows the edited film without the film finished, scene by scene, to motivate them to understand what he wants from them. This is important to know because it's just the whole process of how he works, how he process of this. Everything from the music, from every little thing that he's been working on, he's there to just making it the best possible. And one thing again about the prop, and after I will let you ask question and we'll go over a few more questions. The prop on the swing set, they didn't want to do fake snow. They could do fake snow. There was no problem, they could do. But they found that the snow was not light enough. And I don't know if you saw when the so-called snow fell on him, it looked like lights. I don't know if it looked like, what do you mean, like a thing that you put on, shiny thing?
Like glitter.
Yeah, like glitters, right, exactly, like glitters. And they said they wanted the glitters because they wanted to give the sense of life and not having something with really too drowned. So every little, and this is really most of the important scene of the film. So all these things are making the film, and of course the last scene when you see all the children playing, and he certainly was someone who looked like him walking, it's another thing. Every detail of the film are so powerful. What was difficult for them to shoot is the shoot when they went to the bar. And imagine we are in 1952. To make a scene like this with mirrors, there is mirrors everywhere, there's sound everywhere, sound and music. This is not a digital composition of today where you can take 5 or 6 cameras. This is very, very, and when you see the picture of production where they set everything and they put everything, it's kind of unbelievable. So he is a kind of a masterpiece of what cinema was before. It's not like today we don't shoot film like this. And after that, with Seven Samurai, he shot with 6, 7 cameras. And remember, he made film until he died, until his late age. And really always extremely demanding. The actors, some of them are regular. Of course, that's why you see them in every film. And some of them are not. They move around, and so a lot of like a visionary and a demand on the film of what he is doing like as a production. When they finished the film, that's the story was interesting. When they finished the film, they had music all over. Actually, the composer was dying of tuberculosis. It's an interesting thing. So as he was composing the music of the film, he was suffering from tuberculosis, and when they listened to the music track at the end of the film, when the film was finished, Kurosawa came out of the room and he said, "It doesn't work." So I said, "What does it work? The film is finished. It doesn't work. I don't want this." So I said, "What is this?" He said, "I don't like the music in some part of the film, and I don't know if you, when they are sitting around and everything else." So they took the whole big part of the music out, and then he was satisfied. And this movie, after when it came out, the movie theater did very well. It did very well. So, anything to add?
I want to hear from everybody else.
Yeah. So, any question or anything? It could be comments too. Question is not. We cannot. Obviously, I cannot answer every question, or anybody can answer any question. But if you have comments about how do you feel about cinema about today, or how it was before, or how do you feel about it, are you impacted by this, whatever, just please.
We have a gentleman right back there.
Hi,
Yeah, sir.
So I'm a big fan of Cross. I've seen this film probably like 20 times. I saw it last night to prepare for this because it's one of my favorite films. we know kind of like one of his major influences is both Shakespeare, and then also he has a lot of influence from like Russian literature. And I guess rewatching this today for the first time in like theaters in a long while, I had the first time where I noticed that the young woman kind of like plays this important role, that it's kind of starts with her quitting her job and then kind of like going to work in a factory. Like this kind of like, so there's like kind of like a thread of anti-capitalist like critiques like throughout like his films, like with Highs and Low, Stray Dog. And I'm wondering what kind of like emphasis that kind of like moment where he kind of like goes to see her and she's like working like at a factory. She leaves this kind of bureaucratic like place to be like, I'm gonna go work, and her line seems to like rejuvenate him. Like, I just live and I work.
Something I learned through the process of this film, that he was, connected to the Communist Party in the time.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say communist, people just jump, but all the artists were communists. He is a very rebellious politically, so I think putting this in was making something and going to a factory.
Yeah.
The factory is the power of the worker. All these things are like images that makes a very big difference. One thing too, as you talk about this, that the scene of this little rabbit, when the rabbit passed by, this is like the crucial point of the film, when he's sitting and he sees the little rabbit passing by, who is really maybe connected with children and everything else, it's there, he says, I can do it. And that is really another very important point. So it's a rabbit who is made in the factory. I mean, we could expand in a lot of ways, but seeing this rabbit coming in front of him, he realized, yes, I can do something. And then the change comes. But the change is really kind of, very fast. He changes and he decides to go. But coming back to this, this idea of like rebellious and the factory things, it's really like, I think, very connected to his political position.
Right.
I think,
I mean, I would say most intellectuals in Japan were Marxist and remained Marxist.
Yeah.
I mean, Japanese historiography remains Marxist all the way up through at least the 90s, some could argue further. That being said, I think that there's a very large undercurrent also about the bureaucracy, particularly in the 50s. And so I think that it's more about forward motion and the ability to get things done versus not. And what we see in this film is a push against, when I teach one of my classes, we show Gojira from 54, and then we watch Shin Gojira, which is from 2018, which is also from, they're both from Toyo, also the same place as this came from out. But the monster in Shin Gojira is bureaucracy. And it's a theme that you see throughout Japanese films over and over again. And watching this, having seen the much more modern monster that is bureaucracy, I see that also here. So I think that while you do see a lot of anti-capitalist messages in a lot of his films, I think here it was more the devil you know, the devil you don't. At least there's motion, so you can get something accomplished with that. And I think he was leaning more towards that instead of his own political views.
Yeah, and accepting that your life is going to be whatever it is. He said, I never really realized or questioned that what I was doing is not really anything. And you have this diploma, 25 years of accomplishment or 30 years of accomplishment. I mean, it would be the same today too. I mean, so many people do like a job because they have to do the job, and as they get older, they realize what they've been doing, it's absolutely nothing. They're nothing. So I think like this rebellion aspect of like questioning, is just a question, what am I doing and can I change it? And here, for the last 6 months that he has to do, is really like this kind of frame, he's gonna change it. He's gonna do something. And this is a call to society too, to us, even as today. Because this movie, I think, has a lot of calling of today. You will say, so if you don't like, what are you doing? Can you do something? Can you make a change? And of course, into the process, it's not just him who is dying, because at the time when they are sitting all around, they say, we can die anytime. I love that, because it's this really a super, super question about us as humans, but at any age, at any time. And what do we do from our life, and how do we make it more fruitful, doing something interesting? anything or any comments on it? Yeah.
I think death gave him life, knowing that there's impending death, that the bureaucracy was deadening.
Yeah.
And those people were more dead, he became more alive when death at death's door, like that irony. And
Well, it's a
also with
good
the factory, when you change, she said with the bunny, she said something like that I'm making something that makes kids happy, I'm making something for other people. And also that's when he thought, okay, can I get help?
And a lot of close-up. I mean, the director of photography was extraordinary because they sit on the face of people, but they will not do this so much now. And they say sometimes they sit for 15 seconds on a person looking at her, and they go from looking at her to looking at him, to looking at him on moving his body, having the camera in all different angles. This is talent in the way that he has to make the drawing of it, and he has to position the camera of it. So it's all vision on him already of how he wants to all these things to come up. But these close-up are really powerful, especially the brother or men, because sometimes you don't even see him in the face. You see him with the camera down, he's down. And I mean, really, this guy to show pain, I don't know. I mean, he's an extraordinary actor because he's not going to do too much, he just does enough. And we feel the weight on it, It's like and I think this made him too very famous too, because even though he made film all his life, this was the thing that brought him up into the vision.
His mouth didn't move a lot when he was talking. I thought that was strange.
But think what caused our time to look like a monkey. Because if you see him as a regular actor, like a regular man, he has this pretty, but this idea of like being kind of like his body posture and his face. And I think that, I mean, you will say, are you crazy? What do you want him to look like a monkey? But when you think about it, how he has to carry himself, it's what actors do, they impersonate something, and he really does something, to do like this. And very little of everything, his eyes, it's very powerful. It's very powerful we feel the pain that he's carried too. He's carry pain. But I don't know if he's carry pain just because of his cancer or it's because of this big questioning of what he has been doing with his life and does he want to change it or is he going to change it. I think they are beautiful, they are very strong, they are bothering questions for all of us who are alive, but they are questions that we need to ask. It's like really the big question of life. Yes.
At the last part of the movie, I saw the emphasizing the long struggle of the individual. He's all by himself and he fights against all odds. So I was wondering if there is any political message to that part. One man without any support of any society, comradeship or fellow co-workers.
I think that's a really interesting question. Japan had for so long, as a Confucian society, had pushed the notion of the we above the I. And that's what you see, actually, the bureaucracy, I think they represented extraordinarily well when the bureaucrats are sitting there trying to talk about how to take and how one should and who should be taking credit. It's all the we. We've all done it together. We've done it together. Oh, maybe it should be you. No, it's not me. Oh, but it's you. Oh, no, it's not me. But what is fascinating about this, and it's also what is making the bureaucrats in the room so profoundly uncomfortable, is what you see Watanabe doing in this film is coming out as an I, right? The entire last 5 months of his life, he stops working as part of the machine and comes up as, this is what I think needs to have happen. And yes, I know that it should be this and this and this, and it should be all these multiple people should be working together, but that is not efficient and it literally won't work. We're passing the buck. We have to have a singular vision, and I will be that person, and because I have nothing left to lose. When I was doing my research in Japan, it was funny. You spend all your time in grad school being able to make your argument and say, I argue this, my thesis is this, I'm gonna say this. When I went to Japan, you never use that kind of language. You always have to couch everything. You speak only in the passive voice. You say desho. You use language that softens it. I think, perhaps, maybe. Your thesis is never at the top of your argument. Your thesis is at the conclusion. Because you don't want to put yourself out there as the person who's making a strong statement. It's a very cultural thing. Because of a Confucian society where it is supposed to be much more collaborative. This is a film that I think is very upsetting and also a huge shock to the system, not just because it's from 52. I think that this is a shock to the system for anyone. For us as Americans, if you don't know Confucianism and Buddhism, this is a lot of Buddhism too. But because it is the ability to put yourself out there as the individual who will be the I in doing that.
Yeah, but any rebellious, I mean, I'm French, obviously, I grew up in France. It was the same. France, before the 1968, was like this. It was like a block. You have no individuality. You could really, if you were to be rebellious, it was with a union. But it was never, as an I, and this is the existentialists who brought this and brought like this freedom of wanting to be rebellious. When we rebel, often we rebel with other people, but we rebel in on our name. We put ourselves up front. I don't want to go into politics, but I love that. You go out there yourself. You put your stuff out. That's what he does. And he doesn't let go. He's this old man. He can't even walk, and he's all the time on the back. Here I am. You're not gonna let me go. And this is like such a strong message.
But he's doing it so politely.
And
Or like those long images where he goes to the people who are lower than him on the totem pole, like he's bowing to them, and you see them trying to bow lower than him. And they're like, I don't bow lower than this. I can't bend that low. Because he's not supposed to bow lower than them. That is not done in a Confucian society. He is completely disrupting the norms, but he's doing it so politely.
And even with the gangster. I mean, the gangster, these guys, they're gonna kill him. He's staying. Everybody will run away with this guy who is like, you're gonna go, what are you doing? I wanna break. He sits there. He sits there. He says, I am not gonna move. I'm not gonna. And even they give up. They give up on it because of the politician or whatever,
But the head gangster, the guy who comes out at the end, was the guy he hung out with.
Yeah. So it's because now it's connected and they understand that what it is, and from there they let him go, But again, these strong ways of not wanting to let go, it's pretty, really shows a determination, and so it's kind of, and it finished on a really high point. The finish is really great. These kids are playing, when at the beginning you see this woman who are like supplying, just let's build something for the children, And from there, you are something who exists by the power of one man, and it shows too, how much power we have as an individual, and how much thing we can change. And changing one thing in the life of someone, is changing society. So it's a very strong, because when people told me, you're gonna show a picture about this guy who's dying of cancer, I said, no. It's not a picture about this guy dying of cancer. It's what happened because he's there and what kind of change he can make. So it's very difficult sometimes to describe the film, because people will take it the first level of it and don't realize, but it's a film with a lot of strengths, a lot of hope. And I think for all of us watching this today, it's still the same. It has a lot of common points than what was in 1950s or 1960s, and what cinema is. Cinema as messages, as a human, as society, as all these things who are there. When they are good films, they touch it, they bring you up. When they're not about an art form, they're entertaining. Which is fine, entertainment is fine, but if there is no message, this is strong in the message.
He's been very patient, this gentleman right there.
Mr. Charlie.
Was he making a comment, do you think, about the younger generation because his son was so ungrateful and there was that friction, or was it just a family drama?
Yeah, I don't see it, but it's a good point. You could make this point, that the young population who is like more, spoiled maybe perhaps, and not really well contacted or connected with his family. But Kurosawa was not into so much of the family interaction. You will see it if you come to the next film, with Ozu film, it's called Tokyo Story, Ozu was a master of the family relationship. And that you can see. But Kurosawa was not, so I don't know if it's political or it's like difficult to know. But we can see that he does not understand his father and their communication is not great. But at the end, he still realized something. Well, I hope he realizes. It's hard to know.
I think he's a complicated figure, especially because he's also a soldier. I think I personally would have to watch the film again, really focusing on that to be able to answer it. I think that Kurosawa is not a family storyline guy, and so I think we'd have to watch it again. But I think it's left in the air as to what that's really going on, because they're also, the daughter-in-law was a complicated figure, so there was stuff going on in that family that I don't think he gave us enough.
Yeah, you know, again, this kind of film, you can watch it a few times and you can take it by different angle. But really, we know that, you know, if you're gonna watch something complex about relationship, Ozu is a man. You know, Ozu is a man who talks about every single relationship in the family, with old age and everything, and he does an extraordinary job. So, you know, these are the master of Japanese filmmaking. You know, I mean, we're talking other one, but these two I think are really touching to how you develop a character. And this is what filmmaking is about. It's not just about an action. Now you develop the character, and when you come up with a character. So it's you know, it can be seen in all different ways. You know, but again, the young generation at the time, they are starting to make a living, and this old man has money, he wants to give money to his mistress, maybe, or he thinks he's going to do that. There is all this question about it, or, you know, we're all like open to interpretation.
I was curious about the film's sort of implicit condemnation of the American occupation of Japan, and how that was received at the time, and how that message has kind of resonated throughout the history of Japan and the country's kind of understanding of itself.
I think you know this better than me, for sure.
I think that it definitely underscores a lot of the inadequacy of the bureaucracy. I think that the bureaucracy is always problematic, but I think that Japanese bureaucracy during the occupation is even harder because they are really torn, right? Their former role in the Japanese bureaucracy no longer exists because Japan as an empire no longer exists. They're doing the bidding of the Americans. And so really their job is literally to do nothing unless the Americans told them to do so, but they also need to be Japanese, but they also are dealing with a country that doesn't exist. And so it's this, I think that that's where a lot of the frustration is coming from, and perhaps is why the job is so much less satisfying than it used to be. And so I think that that's where a lot of the initial impetus for the kind of frustration comes from. On top of it, I think a lot of the decadence in the culture that we see, a lot of even the gangsters, the black market, right? All of those things were coming in. Those are all direct results of the occupation. The capitalism, the use of those markets, I don't know about you guys, but if you go on eBay and you search for made in occupied Japan, it's a thing. There are a lot of them and they're expensive. And there's a lot of weird made in occupied Japan stuff, I'll just say. But it's from that time period. So I think that really is a flavor that you see throughout it, particularly as a bureaucrat, right? What is his role in a government that ceased to exist when he dedicated his life to something that was not what he thought it was, and now he's trying to hold together a country that is not his own. And I think that really is where a lot of, and all he wants to do is create a park for the children. And the only way he can do it is by having a red light district help him out, right? Like, it's a complicated conversation.
One thing was interesting too, as I was listening thousands of things about it, they say that stomach cancer was the most common sickness, you know. I mean, at that time, so many people died of tuberculosis around the world, this sickness, you know. But that in Japan, stomach cancer were like very, very, I want to say
Yeah.
popular.
And
but,
that's-
you know,
yeah.
and
That's a direct result of the war as well.
Yeah.
When you look at the ways in which, like, malnutrition was so rough throughout the war. You look at, like, the University of Tokyo, they tore up all of the yards in University of Tokyo. People would go out and they write about how they would go out and they would hunt bugs on Sundays so that they could eat. They sent all the children in Tokyo out into the countryside, and there was no food in the countryside either, so they were eating bark off of trees. So the kind of deprivation, after 15 years, and actually like 9 years of a hot war in Japan, it's hard to imagine. There are pictures in John Dower's book, Embracing Defeat, where they show the size of the average Japanese youth. They were like 5-6 centimeters shorter, because the kids just weren't getting food. They were so malnourished. So I'm not at all surprised that that is a direct result of it. And when you see him in that hospital, and they all know what's coming.
yeah, they know everything. But one film who is really connected to this, I don't know if you know, because I've been showing it, it's called Hiroshima, My Love in 1959, the French movie about like the nurse going there. And they show picture in 1959 how everybody was affected. So it's like years after, and it's still like, even today, I mean, but really a long time after they get affected by this. This even was so early that they knew, but he had dimension that we could not believe it. So you have this too on the top of this film, like what's the consequences of, you know, like the physical aspect of the consequences. And even like when you see, you know, there is this climate too on the film, you know, it's hot. It's muggy, you know, kind of
Tokyo in summer.
It's a mug, you know, you feel this thing. It's not so easy to do, you know. You have to show this on the film. You know, Kurosawa was very well known to have the actor wearing their clothes at home. So the costumes that you are seeing, I love that. He said he did not want people to have costume the first day on the set. He wanted to look like used. So he gives them the costume, whatever they had to wear, for days and days, and they are wearing at home, and they had to use it, and if they had to be dirty, they had to be dirty. When they did Seven Samurai was the same, they could not find the really right you know, costume, so they built a costume from nothing. They took an image and they built everything. He was so much into details, like it's, and when you see documentaries about his work, he's so into every little thing. Even like he put like a light under the water. He just want to bring things perfect. And like a lot of people, a lot of really good directors, he had a team of people who worked with him for a long time. These people knew him, and they were like, you know, helping him, not help, but like he didn't have to worry about camera position because he knew this guy was working with him for a long time. But every time a director looks at a camera position, he wants to tell you something. He has, you know, if the camera is lower and brings somebody up, he has a statement. All this is what cinema is. As today, we don't have this. Today, we don't have this. I mean, any example of the last movies that you have been seeing, I don't know, it could be one battle over the next, or like, I don't know, anything. It's like we are really connecting into, not in the cinematic language, but into the movement, into the fast pace, into things like this. We're not interested about how is the camera is going to be on Sean Penn while he's laying down, how we're going to make it on the right or on the left. We're not, you know, this is still a very artistic, I don't know, I want to say like a painter will paint the paintings and we'll do step by step. So we have to, for anybody who goes to film school, we have to really look at this as really the most extraordinary sense of creation. As today, I go back always, and people have been listening to me saying this, the last Sundance Festival that I entered and I was rejected, no, because I want to tell you that, 17,000 people entered the festival. 17,000 people think that their film is worth, I mean, whatever it is, but the amount of money of people, how many people think that they are filmmakers good enough to enter a festival of this? It's everywhere because the tools are easy. This, you could not do that. You had, oh, it's good and bad. It's good because it's popularizing, but it makes believe people that they can do everything. This is one camera shot, one by one, with big production. It's still a very classical way of making film, but it shows you the master of like with controlling his masterpiece. It's the same thing than to see, Vermeer painting and. I'm not saying that I love Piet Mondrian, whatever. Like it's such a huge difference of like work and knowledge of the skills that you are doing. So. Anything, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, go.
In light of Kurosawa's attention to detail
Yeah.
and what you told us about the permanence of life, is there a historical critical consensus of who is the man on the bridge? And what does the audience think who the man on the bridge
I
is?
think it's him. I think it's him.
Who is the man on the bridge?
At the end.
Of course, it's. I mean, this is my point
Not
of
that
view, but I am an abstract visualist still because I can think that, but everybody can think whatever they want. It's what I love about him. I mean, this can be a lot of different things, and if we talk about people there, I can tell you about few people might think completely different things. But I think it's him. It's Watanabe. Even if he's dead, he's still him. That's what I think.
I think it's the guy who stands up
Yeah.
and then sits down.
Absolutely.
I think it's
This
the
one
idealist
too, it can
too.
be.
And
This
but
one can
it's
be.
like,
Yeah.
he sat down
can be.
and yet he goes
But
to see
you
what.
see, because we don't see his
his
face,
boss had done.
this is how
Yeah.
a filmmaker can be really kind of opening up the question. He leave it to you. You can do whatever you want with it, and one or the other, it's fine, because it's like reinforcing the future.
Right, because he doesn't show the face.
It doesn't show the face, and I love that somehow. You have the positive.
Do you have a guess who you think it is? Do you have a guess?
Yes, I have the same idea. I thought that there was the man who, again, all along stand up against
Yeah.
the
And then
bureaucracy.
Yeah, the one who is
And he
fighting
was
against
happy
it, yeah.
to see the outcome.
Wouldn't it be fun if it was the sun?
But I have, can I
Of course,
ask
but
you?
it's the son who decided at the end to come back, and that is really what the power of like when things are like this. Actually, it bother in general. American audience are bothered by this kind of thing. This is a very
Japanese love
It's a
it.
very European thing,
The Japanese
European.
love it too.
Yeah.
Japanese love an open ending.
Because it's open-ended, So you say, oh, who he is, and then he starts. But in the States, it's very difficult. Like in nature, people want to say, what happened? What happened at the end? What did he do? I want to know what's going on at the end. Why is it so important?
Well, that begs the question of who's the narrator at the beginning.
Yes, that's right too.
It does.
Yeah, it's like, it's how you build the structure, you build the film, you build an idea, a narrative. But one way or another, whatever you are, you come out from a film like this with something. You are carrying, you have been touching emotionally by this, and you do something with it. You go on and you just carry something, or you book and it makes you feel and question certain things. Anyway, I just want to tell you that next week, if you are interested, I will show you Wild Strawberries of Ingmar Bergman in a small space in Rockery Art Park in Livingston. My email is on the paper I gave you. You can send me an email. There is a website with all the film we're going to be over the next 6 months or so. I do film everywhere, in the Maurice Museum, everywhere we have a program. So, let me know if you have any kind of question, or if you have any question, you want anything, just you can email me.
And Tokyo Story is the next one for
Tokyo
Japan.
Stories next month. Only this is like, this is impossible to see on the big screen. It's like, yeah. All right, thank you very much for coming. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.